So I'm going to now welcome Claire to speak.
I wanted to start off by contrasting two different stories about growing up in Britain. And I think that both of them are stories that you'll probably recognise. The first is about a particular young man who grew up being told that the world was at his feet. In fact, you might even say that there was something of an entitlement culture, a promise of grand destiny awaiting in his family. Decent education was a given. Like several generations before him, he would be schooled at Euston College. Then it was Oxford. Of course, there were no tuition fees back then, but if there had been, it wouldn't really have been much of a problem for him. There was a little bit of a spell of youthful rebellion which led to what's now a slightly embarrassing incident involving a gang of tanked-up posh boys and a smashed restaurant window. But no matter, because Mummy and Daddy could pick up the tab and all was well. All those connections paid off. The next thing, he's a hot shot at Tory Party HQ, and the rest is history. Contrast that to the second story. A young person who's growing up in Britain today. They might live in a nearby London borough, maybe Hackney, maybe Waltham Forest, or maybe they live a little bit further afield, in Hull, in Newcastle, or somewhere else around the country. It doesn't really matter, the story looks similar. You grow up, and you're hopeful about the future. You're hopeful because that's what it's like to be young. You're constantly told that hard work is the key to it all, that education is going to open doors for you. So you work hard, you slave away at your GCSE revision, only to find that when you get to the exam, they've moved the goalposts. You win yourself a place at college, but without support, without the lifeline of EMA, you can't afford your textbooks. Your struggling parents have to scrimp and save to help with transport. With no money to spend, weekends involve a lot of hanging around without much to do, but they tell you that even that's a criminal offence. You're stopped and searched and harassed by the police. And even if you make it through college despite all that, you're armed with a fistful of A-levels and you think university might open new doors. Then you find it's £50,000 for an education. Maybe you still decide to go ahead. You think you'll worry about all that debt later. You arrive to find overworked, underpaid lecturers, services cut to the bone, and the nightmare of trying to find accommodation you can afford. And if you've made it through all that, and even if you've had to drop out at any point along the way, you know, your most likely next step is the dole queue. And there you'll join 1 million young people who are out of work, labelled scroungers, vilified as lazy, but really just desperate to have an opportunity to use their skills and talents. But what you're most likely to be offered is the opportunity or the humiliation of working for nothing. And if you happen to express a bit of discontent, to say that workfare isn't what you expected, that you thought pound downs could possibly get by without your unpaid labour, that you thought that voluntary work would be, well, voluntary. If you say any of that, you're lambasted as a job snob, as lazy, undeserving. And if eventually you do manage to get a job, it will probably be one you're overqualified for, probably one that's so insecure you have no idea if it will be there from day to day. And you'll probably be one of the 1.6 million 20 to 40-year-olds who are not afforded the dignity of their own living space, who are forced to live their parents into adulthood. And all those smashed expectations, those hopes that were dashed, the sneering smiles of the Tory boys who represent the haves, all of that starts to stir a mixture of emotions. You're disappointed, let down, anxious. But increasingly, your overwhelming feeling is indignation, anger, rage. It's rage at a system which shows us gleaming towers of wealth, but only offers us pennies. And it's this anger that worldwide has driven millions of young people to the street. It's this anger that's driven movements like Occupy. It's this anger that drove young Greeks to the squares, the anger of Egypt's young revolutionaries. And it's the same anger that saw thousands take to the streets in the student movement of 2010, closer to home, here in Britain. And this anger, this rage, it exists misery and despair. It exists because we are not willing to wave goodbye to our futures. So in a sense, it's a kind of optimistic anger. It's optimistic because if angry individuals get together, if we get organised, if we have a programme, a strategy, a set of demands, then what you start to see isn't an angry mob, it's a movement that can change things. In 2 weeks' time, on November the 21st, thousands of students will take to the streets of London. It's 2 years following the massive NUS demonstration that sparked the student movement. We're marching to defend education against privatisation and cuts, to demand an end to sky-high fees that are pricing us out, to demand the reinstatement of EMA, and a march that must only be the start. Unlike 2 years ago, NUS must not abandon the struggle when the going gets tough. We need a leadership that's as determined to fight as we are. And we need to link the struggle to the wider battle being waged against austerity, to join with workers and trade unionists in the fight against the brutal Con-Dems. Our generation will not be a lost generation. We won't, because we will not stand up to the capitalists, we will stand up to the capitalists, the bankers, big business and their political representatives who are trying to conspire to make us one. Because while many of us are facing great hardship, the anger that's brewing, the rage at this system, and the mass movements that are coming will give us enormous opportunities. Because they are going to give our generation opportunities to change the world, opportunities to fight for a socialist future, a future for the 99%.